Hey guys, this is Prasid Banerjee from Digit.in, and we are going to talk about the Infocus M680 smartphone. It has just been launched in India. It sells on Snapdeal for 10,999 rupees. So as you can imagine, it is a very competitive segment. This is where most of the value for money smartphones in the market are, and Infocus is pushing this one into the market. So the M680 comes with a 1.5 GHz MediaTek octa-core processor. That's the MT6753 processor. It has 2 GB of RAM, a 5.5-inch Full HD display, and its USP is that it has a 13MP camera on the front and a 13MP camera on the back. But does that make it a good phone? We'll find out. So to talk about what's good about this phone, I have to start with the display. The 5.5-inch Full HD display gives this a 401 ppi pixel density, and with that it actually shows very good colors. It's sharp enough, it's good with the colors, and it's something that I really like. But having said that, if I had to choose between say this and a Xiaomi Mi 4i, I would of course go for a Mi 4i, and that's not just because of the higher pixel density on the Mi 4i, it's also because the Mi 4i, the colors on the Mi 4i pop. On this one it doesn't pop. This is more like a HTC like display. It is balanced, it is nice, but it has a slight AMOLED feel about it. Even though it is an IPS display, it is a little on the warmer side, but it's not really something that pops, you know. So many people I know will not really like this display because of that if they had to choose, but again, this is still a very good display. Yes, the touch experience is slightly maybe different from the Xiaomi Mi 4i and the Asus Zenfone 2, but this display is definitely up there with say the Asus Zenfone 2, but not as good as the Mi 4i. The second thing that is good about this phone is the battery. It has a 2600 mAh battery, which doesn't sound like much, and to be honest, this phone will not last you the whole day, but it's above average. It can easily go for about 12 to 13 hours depending on your usage. On a regular day's usage with some calls, a lot of text messages, some social networking, and very little gaming, I could easily get past 12 hours, and that's something really good about this phone. Of course, that has been done through a lot of things. The processor does not affect the battery as much, and it's a lower clock processor. In order to provide that battery life that I'm talking about, this phone also compromises on the performance, which brings me to the not so good elements of this phone. For example, gaming on this phone is not really that good. It's not as bad as say some phones that cost 5,000 rupees. But then again, there are phones in this price range. Even the Asus Zenfone 2 for that matter is much better than this. Consider the Meizu M2 Note, which has the same processor and costs rupees 1000 lower than this phone. That phone can also give you a better gaming performance than this phone, and that's something that I don't like. If you're a big gamer, you won't really like this. There are lags. High-end games like Need for Speed No Limits, Marvel Contest of Champions, Injustice, Gods Among Us, these games take a lot of time to load. There are a lot of stutters in between various screens, even while you're playing sometimes. So yeah, that's something that I don't really like about this phone. Another thing I don't like is the UI. Although this is one of the few phones that comes with this app drawer nowadays, my problem with Infocus's in-life UI always has been that this UI doesn't really do anything, you know. It's essentially a stock Android UI, which is there for the sake of being there. It doesn't add anything to your phone, it doesn't really look good, it doesn't make your phone look that good, and it adds some unnecessary apps like the mobile assistant, the power detective. There are other preloaded apps that can be removed from the phone, but then there are apps like the mobile assistant and the power detective and some others which cannot be removed. And the mobile assistant and power detective really do not do anything worthwhile. For example, the mobile assistant tells me that apps like Facebook, Twitter and some others are at risk. They're putting my phone at risk. Why? Because they're taking permissions from my contacts and everything. Now the thing is, you already know you're giving these apps permissions, and if you don't want to give permissions, then this phone, being upgradable to Marshmallow, which Infocus has promised, you will be able to take away those permissions from these. So what exactly does the mobile assistant do? It's just this extra app which I have for no reason. And if you are going to use these features, you'll download an app of your own choice. You'll not necessarily use Infocus's own app. Similarly, the power detective tells me that when I'm playing a game, it's taking up too much battery. Well, duh. Another thing that Infocus is trying to sell this phone on is the design. It has a plastic and metal build. It has a metal frame on the side and a plastic back. But even though some people may like this, looks are of course subjective. I personally do not like this design. It attracts dust quite a bit. The display gets smudged very easily, and it doesn't really do much. It's not an ergonomic design. The phone is quite wide. It cannot be used with one hand, which is fine for 5.5-inch devices, but then again there are better 5.5-inch devices out there which feel much better. This one actually just feels like something that the company has cooked up. If you look very closely, you'll see tiny gaps between the area where the plastic meets this metal design, the plastic bands that are crossing the metal. There are some gaps there. These are signs of a design that has not really been paid a lot of attention to, and that's not something I would recommend for any smartphone. Coming to the most important part of this phone, it has a 13MP camera on the front and a 13MP camera on the back. So that would make the camera its USP, right? Not really. This camera doesn't really provide you the quality that even the Meizu M2 Note can provide, for that matter. Under ideal conditions like studio lights and bright sunlight, this actually cannot give you very good colors, and sometimes the details are just not good. What's even worse is that this phone can also overexpose pictures often, and it takes a lot of time to focus. That is not something that we want from phones today, and we are used to much better. On the front camera, the things are a little better, but then again the problem with the front camera is that it oversoftens images, and that is again something that you wouldn't want. The reason for this is that while many phones do this for the front camera, and softening is good for when you're shooting faces and people, the problem is over softening makes your faces look like they're wax figures, and that's not something that you would really like, would you? Under low light, the camera again cannot really take very good pictures because the pictures are dark, there's a lot of noise, and again pictures are not really usable. So talking about the Infocus M680 overall, this is definitely not a bad effort by Infocus, but the thing is that there are much better phones out there. So what exactly is in this phone that will make me recommend it? I can't recommend it, and even though it has a good display and above average battery life, which might be good for some people, there are phones like the Asus Zenfone 2, the Meizu M2 Note, the Xiaomi Mi 4i, which can give you better performance in all respects at around the same price. Yes, you'll have to spend more for the Asus Zenfone 2, but then again you'll get much more with that. You can spend around the same price for the Mi 4i and get better camera, better display and better battery life. Or you can go for the Meizu M2 Note, save ₹1000 and get better performance in this, similar battery life and a better camera. So yeah, Infocus needs to do a little more work on this phone.